The evening sun had dipped below the horizon. Walter sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his phone. The day had been uneventful. Work, traffic, dinner. But something in the air felt off. He couldn't shake the sense that tonight would be different. In the hallway, Gloria stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress. It was sleek black and clung to her like it was painted on. The kind of dress she hadn't worn in years, not since their early days when they were still trying to impress each other. Walter glanced up from his phone, his frown deepening. Isn't that a bit much just for drinks with your friends? His voice was calm, but there was a tension behind the words. Gloria didn't even turn to face him. She kept her eyes on her reflection, tugging at the hem of the dress, as if she hadn't heard him. Gloria? Walter pressed. With a sigh, she finally looked at him through the mirror. Oh, come on, Walter. It's just a dress. It's not a big deal. Walter leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. It's not about the dress. You never dress like this for a simple girl's night out. What's going on? Gloria rolled her eyes, the annoyance creeping into her voice. What's your problem? You think I'm trying to get attention or something? Walter stood up, walking toward her slowly. I'm saying it's out of character, that's all. You've barely worn that dress since we got married. Her eyes flicked to his reflection again, and this time, there was a glint of something sharp. Maybe I'm just sick of playing house with someone who doesn't appreciate me, she said, turning to face him. The words hit him like a slap, but he tried to stay composed. I appreciate you, Gloria, but that doesn't mean you can just... She cut him off, her voice suddenly harsh. You appreciate me? How? By sitting on your ass every night, scrolling through your phone while I go out, and try to have some fun? Walter's mouth went dry. The conversation was slipping into unfamiliar territory. We both work hard, he said, trying to keep his tone measured. I've had a rough few years since the layoff, but I'm trying. We're supposed to support each other. Gloria laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Support? Don't make me laugh, Walter. You've been dragging me down with you for years now. Walter took a step closer, his heart pounding faster. What the hell are you talking about? We've had our struggles, but I thought we were a team. Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms over her chest. A team? You really don't get it, do you? You're not the man I married anymore. I thought you'd bounce back, find a way to rebuild after you lost your job. But here we are, years later, and you're still stuck in the same place. Meanwhile, I'm out here trying to keep up appearances, to keep myself together. Walter's voice rose. And this dress? This is you keeping yourself together? Gloria smirked, taking a step toward the door. This dress attracts wealthy men. Brokea like you won't get it. The venom in her words froze him in place. His jaw tightened, and his fists clenched at his sides. What the fuck are you talking about? Her lips curled into a cruel smile. Honey, I'm done with you. I'm an independent woman. I can do whatever I want whenever I want. And right now, I want to go out and have fun with people who can actually afford to live a decent life. Walter could feel the anger rising inside him, boiling up from the pit of his stomach. If you walk out that door, he said, his voice low and dangerous, then our marriage is over. Gloria laughed again, shaking her head. It's been over for a long time, loser. You just didn't notice. She reached for her purse, and for a moment, Walter was speechless. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was the woman he'd loved for years, the woman he'd fought for, worked for, sacrificed for. And now she was standing here, throwing it all in his face like it meant nothing. Gloria, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Are you really going to throw everything away? Just like that? She turned to face him one last time, her eyes cold and unforgiving. I already have. I found someone richer and, frankly, a lot better in bed than you. The words hung in the air like poison. Walter's vision blurred with rage. He took a step toward her, but before he could say another word, she was gone. The door slammed shut behind her, the echo reverberating through the silent house. Walter stood there, frozen, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. Gloria had walked out. She had left him, and she didn't even care. For what felt like an eternity, Walter didn't move. He couldn't. His mind raced, replaying the conversation over and over again, each time hitting him harder than the last. The anger inside him bubbled, then exploded. He grabbed the nearest chair and hurled it across the room, the wood splintering as it crashed into the wall. "God damn it," he screamed, his voice hoarse with fury. He punched the countertop, feeling the sharp sting of pain shoot through his knuckles. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the storm raging inside him. He paced the room, his breath coming in ragged gasps. How could she do this? After everything they'd been through? After all the sacrifices he'd made for her? His hands shook as he grabbed his phone and stared at the screen, the urge to call her, to demand answers, boiling within him. But what good would that do? She'd already made her choice. Walter collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. His heart was racing, his chest tight. He wanted to scream, to break something, to hit something. But instead, he sat there, drowning in his thoughts, his mind a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and hurt. After what felt like hours, he finally stood up. His body felt heavy, weighed down by the gravity of what had just happened. He looked around the room, at the remnants of the life they'd built together. The pictures on the wall, the furniture they'd picked out together, the little knickknacks she loved to collect. It all felt meaningless now. Walter walked to the window and stared out at the dark street. Somewhere out there, Gloria was with someone else. Someone who, in her words, was richer, better, more capable. He clenched his jaw, his mind racing with thoughts of revenge. But even then, there was a part of him that still wanted her to come back. To apologize, to say it was all a mistake. But deep down, he knew she wouldn't. This wasn't just some fight. This was the end. As the reality of it all settled in, Walter felt something shift inside him. The hurt and anger began to harden into something else. Something cold. He had been blindsided, humiliated, discarded like he was nothing. But he wasn't going to let her win. He needed to think, to plan. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And as the last traces of daylight faded from the sky, Walter made a silent vow. He would make her pay. Walter stared at the ceiling, his body exhausted, but his mind wide awake. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Gloria laughing, carefree, played on a loop in his mind. She had left without a second thought, leaving him with nothing but rage and humiliation. The thought of her with another man, someone richer, more powerful, gnawed at him relentlessly. But it wasn't just jealousy. It was the sheer audacity of how little she had valued him. And that made it worse. He spent his nights pacing the living room, his mind racing with thoughts of revenge. He couldn't let her get away with it. She had broken him, torn their marriage apart, but he wouldn't let her walk away scot-free. She needed to feel the same devastation she'd left him with. Walter knew where to start. Gloria had always been careless with her social media, flaunting her life and subtly hinting at things she never discussed with him. He knew she was with someone else now, but who was he? Who had she traded him for? The answer wasn't hard to find. Gloria's Instagram was filled with clues, though she hadn't posted anything blatantly incriminating. A couple of dinners at fancy restaurants, a few pictures of luxury places she had no business being in with her salary, and one particular photo, a hand resting on a table, a Rolex watch barely visible in the frame. Walter zoomed in on the watch, his brain piecing it together. Gloria had never been subtle about her love for status, and it didn't take long for Walter to find out whose hand that was. A few searches later, he stumbled upon Ryan Mitchell, the high-powered executive from a hedge fund downtown. Wealthy, flashy, and with the reputation of someone who liked to show off. Gloria's type 2 AT. Of course, Walter muttered to himself. Ryan was everything Gloria had been chasing for years, the very embodiment of what she thought she deserved: money, status, and power. Walter wasn't shocked. Gloria had always been drawn to people who could offer her more. Back when they first got together, Walter was on the rise, his career at a tech startup looking promising. But when the company went under and he couldn't find anything close to what he once had, things began to fall apart. He had never been enough for her after that. She wanted more. She wanted Ryan. But Walter wasn't going to just sit back and let her have her new life. He had nothing to lose now, and that made him dangerous. He started digging deeper into Ryan's life, beyond what was on social media. Ryan was powerful, yes, but no one at that level was clean. No one made that kind of money without bending the rules somewhere. Walter knew that if he could find the right leverage, he could destroy Ryan, and by extension, Gloria. He spent hours combing through public records, company filings, and employee reviews. Ryan's hedge fund was successful, but Walter knew there had to be something hidden, something that wasn't meant for public eyes. His tech skills, rusty as they were, came back to him easily. He used encrypted sites, back channels, and his network of tech contacts to find more. And after weeks of sleepless nights and relentless searching, he found it. In the depths of Ryan's company records, buried beneath layers of legitimate transactions, Walter discovered a series of illegal deals. They were carefully hidden, disguised as routine expenses, but the numbers didn't add up. Ryan had been laundering money, skimming millions from his own clients, and funneling it through offshore accounts. It was the kind of fraud that could ruin a man like Ryan if it ever came to light. Walter leaned back in his chair, a grim smile spreading across his face. He had him. Ryan might be untouchable in his world of wealth and privilege, but Walter now held the keys to his downfall. And he would use it. But it wasn't enough to just expose Ryan. No, Walter wanted Gloria to suffer too. She had left him for this man, abandoned their life together for the promise of luxury and comfort. Now, she would watch as everything crumbled. Walter spent the next few days carefully planning his next move. He couldn't afford to be reckless. He needed to ensure that when the time came, the blow would be swift and devastating. He created multiple anonymous accounts, routing through various servers to cover his tracks. He gathered every piece of evidence he could, documenting each illegal transaction with timestamps and details. When everything was ready, Walter sat at his computer and drafted the email. He addressed it to the Securities and Exchange Commission, detailing Ryan's fraudulent activities and attaching the incriminating files. He knew this would trigger a full-scale investigation, one that would drag Ryan's entire empire into the light. But before sending it off, he added a personal touch. He knew Gloria was tied to Ryan now, both publicly and privately. If Ryan went down, she would go down with him, her reputation shattered by association. And that thought gave Walter a sense of satisfaction he hadn't felt in months. With one final click, the email was sent. The next few days were agonizingly slow. Walter watched from a distance as the investigation began to unfold. It started with whispers, rumors in the financial world about irregularities in Ryan's hedge fund. Then, a full-blown news report broke, detailing the charges of fraud and money laundering. Ryan's face was plastered all over the news, his name now synonymous with scandal. Walter smiled bitterly as he watched the chaos unfold. Ryan's empire was crumbling, just as he had planned. But it was Gloria's reaction that he was waiting for. He didn't have to wait long. A week after the scandal broke, Walter received a text from an unknown number. He knew it was Gloria even before he opened it. "Walter, please. We need to talk. I didn't know. I made a mistake." Walter stared at the message, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. She was panicking now, her new life falling apart at the seams. The very thing she had traded him for was slipping through her fingers, and now she was crawling back, desperate for salvation. For a moment, he considered responding, but then he thought better of it. She didn't deserve an answer. She had made her choice, and now she was living with the consequences. Walter deleted the message and turned off his phone. He had no interest in hearing her excuses, no need for her apologies. He had gotten what he wanted. He had destroyed the life she had built without him, and now, as far as he was concerned, she was nothing more than a painful memory. As he sat back in his chair, watching the news coverage of Ryan's downfall, Walter finally felt something close to peace. He hadn't just won. He had taken everything from her, just as she had taken everything from him. Walter knew that simply confronting Gloria wouldn't do any good. She would laugh in his face, dismissing him the way she had that night. He had learned enough about her new life with Ryan to know that this wasn't just a phase. Gloria had moved on, fully entrenched in her new reality, and there was no turning back. No, if he wanted justice, if he wanted her to feel the same pain he had felt, he needed something far more devastating. Something nuclear. Sitting in his dimly lit office, Walter mapped out every possible angle. He needed to hit both Gloria and Ryan in a way that would dismantle their new life together, piece by piece. His plan began with Ryan, the man Gloria had chosen over him. On the surface, Ryan appeared untouchable, wealthy, respected, with a squeaky clean reputation. But Walter knew that no one in Ryan's position got there without cutting corners. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and quiet determination. Walter sifted through endless public records, piecing together any scrap of information he could find on Ryan's business dealings. His tech skills were rusty, but he pushed through, using every trick he remembered from his days in the industry. Slowly, the pieces started to fall into place. Walter found it in a series of offshore transactions buried deep in the financial records of Ryan's hedge fund. These weren't the usual tax avoidance schemes common in the business world. They were something much darker. Laundering. Ryan had been using shell companies to funnel dirty money through various accounts, hiding it in plain sight under layers of legitimate business deals. If exposed, these transactions wouldn't just ruin Ryan's reputation, they would send him to prison. Walter smirked as he leaned back in his chair. He had what he needed, but he wasn't done yet. He needed to dismantle Gloria's world, too. While Ryan's downfall would hurt her indirectly, Walter wanted to hit her personally. Gloria still had access to their joint bank accounts, the house, and their other shared assets. She had walked out on him, but she hadn't yet legally severed ties. What she didn't know was that Walter had been preparing for this long before she had even left. Over the past few months, he had quietly moved their savings into a private offshore account, one that only he had access to. He hadn't touched the accounts she used daily. Those were still in her name, but everything of real value was now in his control. The house was also under his name, something he had insisted on early in their marriage when they had first bought it. Gloria hadn't cared at the time, too focused on her own ambitions to worry about the details of property ownership. Now it would be her downfall. Walter spent hours meticulously combing through every financial connection they still shared. Her credit cards were tied to the accounts that would soon be frozen. Her access to the house would be revoked with a few keystrokes. By the time she realized what had happened, it would be too late. The day arrived sooner than Walter expected. One morning, as Gloria lay in Ryan's luxurious apartment, she woke to a series of devastating notifications on her phone. Groggy, she rubbed her eyes and checked her email. Her bank had sent her a warning: insufficient funds. She scrolled through her notifications, her heart rate quickening. One by one, she saw alerts for her credit cards. Declined, declined, declined. Panic started to set in. Gloria scrambled out of bed, her fingers trembling as she dialed Walter's number. Ryan was still asleep, oblivious to the chaos Gloria was about to unleash. The phone rang once, twice, and then Walter's voice came through, cold and detached. "What's going on, Walter?" Gloria's voice was tight, a mixture of anger and confusion. "Why are my accounts frozen? I can't access anything." Walter's voice was calm, almost indifferent. "I told you, Gloria, if you walked out that door, it was over. You get nothing." She was stunned into silence for a moment. "What the hell does that mean? You can't do this. That money is mine, too. The house, everything." Walter let out a low chuckle, one that sent chills down her spine. "Actually, no, it's not. The house is in my name. The savings, well, let's just say I moved it somewhere you can't touch. As for the credit cards, they're tied to accounts I've just shut down." Her breath quickened as she processed what he was saying. "You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll take you to court, Walter, and you'll lose. This is illegal." He sighed, almost as if he was tired of the conversation. "Go ahead and try. But by the time you get through all the legal battles, everything will be long gone. You won't have anything left." Gloria's voice grew more frantic. "Walter, you wouldn't do this to me. We were married. You can't just leave me with nothing." His tone shifted, colder, more menacing. "You left me with nothing the moment you walked out that door, Gloria. You made your choice, and now you get to live with it." Gloria could hear the finality in his words. He wasn't bluffing. Her mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. She turned to look at Ryan, still asleep in the bed, completely unaware of the financial meltdown unfolding in front of her. "What about the house? I can still go back, right?" Her voice had lost its edge, replaced with a quiet desperation. Walter paused before answering, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her squirm. "No, Gloria. You can't go back. The locks have already been changed. Consider yourself evicted. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had no access to money, no home to return to, and the man she had left Walter for was about to face legal hell. Walter's plan had worked flawlessly, and she was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. "Walter, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't know it would end like this. I didn't think, you didn't think," he interrupted, his voice steely. "That's your problem. You never thought about anyone but yourself. Now you get to see what it's like to be left behind." Tears welled up in Gloria's eyes as the gravity of the situation sank in. She had lost everything: her home, her financial stability, and soon, her new life with Ryan would crumble under the weight of his illegal activities. She was trapped with no way out. "Goodbye, Gloria," Walter said, his voice cutting through the silence. And with that, he hung up, leaving her standing in the middle of Ryan's apartment, her world crashing down around her. Gloria dropped her phone, sinking to the floor in shock. She had thought she had escaped her old life, thought she had found something better. But now, as the walls closed in around her, she realized just how wrong she had been. Walter had taken everything from her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Gloria had always been able to talk her way out of trouble, whether it was with Walter, her friends, or the men she flirted with at parties. She had mastered the art of manipulation. But now, as her life unraveled, every tactic she tried was met with cold indifference or outright rejection. Walter was her first target. She started with angry messages, accusing him of sabotaging her life. "You can't do this to me," she had screamed into her phone during one of their calls. "I'll take you to court. I'll expose you for what you've done." But her threats had no effect. Walter had quietly laughed, as if her words were meaningless. "Go ahead. You'll spend years fighting, and by then, it'll be too late for you. I've already won." The more she tried to fight him, the more she realized how thoroughly he had dismantled her life. Walter had taken control of everything: their money, the house, even her reputation. She had nothing left to hold over him, no leverage, no cards to play. Each day that passed without access to her accounts or home brought a fresh wave of panic. Ryan, too, had begun to pull away. At first, he had tried to comfort her. When the credit cards stopped working and her bank accounts were frozen, Ryan had offered to cover her expenses. But as the SEC investigation into his financial dealings heated up, his patience thinned. The late-night phone calls between Gloria and Walter became a point of tension between her and Ryan. "I've got my own shit to deal with," Ryan snapped one evening, his face flushed with frustration. "I don't need you bringing more drama into my life." "But you promised," Gloria argued, her voice trembling. She could feel him slipping away. "You said you'd take care of me." Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I didn't sign up for this mess. I've got investigators breathing down my neck because of that shitstorm your husband stirred up. I don't need more problems." Gloria's stomach churned. She knew Ryan was under immense pressure. The SEC was closing in fast, and his hedge fund was on the verge of collapse. All the luxury, all the money and power she had counted on, it was evaporating before her eyes. But even then, she clung to the belief that Ryan would come through for her, that he would protect her from the disaster her life had become. Days turned into weeks, and Ryan's patience continued to wear thin. Gloria's once glamorous life now felt like a house of cards, teetering on the edge. One night, after another argument, Ryan came home late, his face tight with stress. He poured himself a drink and sat on the couch, ignoring her as she stood in the doorway, waiting for him to acknowledge her. "Ryan, we need to talk," she started, her voice small, hesitant. He took a long sip of his whiskey and looked at her with tired eyes. "Gloria," he began, his tone calm but cold, "this isn't working anymore." She froze, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" "We're just going through a rough patch. Once this investigation blows over—" "No," he interrupted, setting his drink down on the table. "It's not just the investigation. It's you. Ever since this mess with your ex started, you've been a distraction. A liability." Her throat tightened. "A liability?" Ryan stood up, walking past her toward the bedroom. "I need to focus on saving my company, not cleaning up your mess. This thing between us, It's over. Gloria's world shattered. She followed him into the bedroom, desperation clawing at her. Please, Ryan, don't do this. I've got nothing left. You promised we'd build a life together. Ryan didn't even look at her as he opened his closet and began packing a suitcase. I promised you when things were good. Now they're not. She stood in the doorway, her legs trembling. Ryan, please. I need you. I don't have anywhere else to go. He paused, glancing at her with a mixture of pity and annoyance. That's not my problem anymore. And with that, he zipped up his suitcase and walked past her, leaving her standing there, stunned, as he walked out of the apartment for good. Gloria crumpled onto the floor, sobbing. Everything she had sacrificed for her, everything she had thrown away for this new life was gone. Ryan had abandoned her, and Walter had destroyed her. She was completely alone. After a sleepless night spent curled up in the corner of the now-empty apartment, Gloria realized there was only one place left to turn. Walter. She had tried to threaten him, tried to manipulate him, but none of it had worked. The only option left was to beg for his forgiveness. She had to make him see that she was sorry, that she had made a mistake. Surely, after everything they had been through, he wouldn't leave her like this. With no money, no home, and no pride left, Gloria found herself standing at Walter's front door. She hesitated for a moment, wiping her tear-streaked face before knocking. Walter answered the door after a few moments, his expression unreadable. He didn't look surprised to see her, but there was no warmth in his eyes, either. Walter, she whispered, her voice shaky. Please, I need to talk to you. He stood there in silence for a moment, looking at her as if weighing whether or not to even entertain her plea. Finally, he stepped aside, allowing her to enter. Gloria walked into the house that used to be hers, memories of their life together flooding her mind. She had thought she had moved on, but now, standing here, it felt as though she had lost everything that had ever mattered. She turned to face him, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Walter, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. He held up his hand, cutting her off. You didn't realize what, Gloria? That you were trading everything we built for a man who doesn't give a damn about you. Her lip quivered as tears welled up in her eyes. I was wrong. I know that now. Ryan's gone. He left me. I don't have anyone else. Please, I need you. Walter's face remained hard, his eyes cold. You made your choice, Gloria. You walked out on me. You laughed in my face when I told you it was over. And now you're standing here, begging me to save you. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, I'm begging you. Please, Walter. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me like this. Walter looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then finally he spoke, his voice calm but firm. Gloria, you killed us the moment you chose someone else over me. You broke this marriage. You threw it away. Gloria dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. Walter didn't flinch. He stood there, looking down at her with a mixture of pity and indifference. There's nothing left to make right, he said quietly. I've moved on. Now, you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Gloria on the cold doorstep, her sobs echoing through the empty house. She was alone, completely and utterly alone. Walter's plan wasn't just about causing chaos for Gloria and Ryan. It was about reclaiming his power. In the days following Gloria's desperate visit, he watched from a distance as the consequences of her decisions came crashing down. The fallout was swift, brutal, and devastating. Ryan's legal issues had exploded into public view. The SEC investigation wasn't just a private matter anymore. It was all over the financial news, and Ryan was being scrutinized under a microscope. His hedge fund, once thriving and seemingly invincible, began to crumble. Investors pulled out, and the board of directors was forced to step in, suspending Ryan and launching a full audit. Charges of insider trading loomed on the horizon, and his reputation, along with his wealth, was disintegrating faster than anyone could have predicted. Walter followed the news closely, each headline confirming that his plan was working. He had sent the anonymous tip to the SEC weeks before, planting the seed of Ryan's destruction. It was poetic justice, watching the man who had stolen his wife lose everything. But more satisfying than that was seeing Gloria dragged down alongside him. Gloria had always cared about appearances, about status, money, and the admiration of others. She had traded her marriage for what she believed was a better life, a life with someone wealthier, more successful. But now, that life was slipping through her fingers. Ryan's name had become toxic, and anyone associated with him, including Gloria, was persona non grata in the social circles she once prized. At first, Gloria tried to salvage her reputation. She attended parties, smiling brightly as if nothing had changed, but the whispers followed her everywhere. The same people who had once fawned over her now kept their distance, unwilling to be tainted by the scandal. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who had jumped ship for a sinking one. Invitations to exclusive events dried up, her social media followers dwindled, and her name became synonymous with disgrace. Walter took a certain pleasure in watching her fall from grace. He wasn't proud of it, but after everything she had done, the betrayal, the lies, the cruelty, he felt justified. He had been humiliated, but now she was the one being publicly shamed. And the irony was she had done it to herself. One afternoon, Walter sat in a coffee shop, his laptop open to a financial news website, the latest headline about Ryan's downfall flashing across the screen. He sipped his coffee slowly, scrolling through the comments section, where people tore into Ryan's character and speculated about jail time. A message notification popped up on his phone. It was from Gloria. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. "I know you've been behind all of this," her message read. "Congratulations. You've ruined my life. Are you happy now?" Walter stared at the message, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, he considered not responding at all. But then he typed back, "You ruined your own life, Gloria. I just gave you the push." Her response came quickly. "What do you want from me? What do I have to do to make this stop?" Walter shook his head. She still didn't understand. It wasn't about making her suffer endlessly. It was about freeing himself from the grip she had held over him for so long. He had already won. "There's nothing you can do," Walter replied. "I'm done." As he hit send, Walter felt a strange sense of closure. For months, he had been consumed by anger, plotting his revenge, waiting for the moment when Gloria would realize how deeply she had wronged him. But now, as he sat there, watching the fallout unfold, he realized something important. He didn't need to keep fighting her. He had already taken back control of his life. Gloria's frantic messages continued throughout the day, each one more desperate than the last. She begged him to reconsider, to meet her, to talk things through. But Walter didn't respond. He had nothing more to say to her. That evening, Walter stood on the balcony of his new apartment, gazing out over the city skyline. The apartment was smaller than the house he and Gloria had shared, but it felt like a palace to him. It was his space, a place where he could breathe freely without the weight of a broken marriage hanging over him. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the rooftops. Walter took a deep breath, the cool breeze brushing against his face. He had been through hell, months of betrayal, heartache, and anger, but he had emerged on the other side stronger. He had rid himself of a toxic relationship, and now he was free to rebuild his life on his terms. He thought back to the man he had been when Gloria had first walked out, broken, humiliated, unsure of how to move forward. Now, he was a different person. He had reclaimed his confidence, his independence, and his sense of self-worth. And it hadn't come from tearing Gloria down, though that had played a part. It had come from realizing that he didn't need her validation or anyone else's to be whole. As Walter stood there, a notification buzzed on his phone. He glanced at it. Another news article about Ryan. This one speculating about potential jail time. He swiped it away, uninterested. Ryan was finished and so was Gloria. They were no longer part of his life, and he was done wasting energy on them. Walter's phone buzzed again, but this time it was a message from a different contact. Sarah, a colleague he had reconnected with recently. She had been there for him during the tough times, offering support without judgment. Her message was simple. "Dinner tomorrow?" Walter smiled to himself and typed back a quick yes. He was moving forward, and that was all that mattered now. As the city lights flickered on in the distance, Walter realized something. Revenge, in the end, wasn't about watching someone else fall. It wasn't about destruction or vindication. It was about reclaiming your life from the ashes of what had been and building something new, something better. He had done that. He had won, not by tearing Gloria down, but by rebuilding himself. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Walter felt a deep, genuine sense of peace. He stepped back inside his apartment, closing the balcony door behind him. There was no need to look back anymore. The future awaited him, bright and full of possibilities. And this time, he was ready to embrace it.